So you talked about some of the unfaithfulness that exists within the church and the weakness within the church. Would you mind just talking about that a little bit more? What is some of that unfaithfulness and weakness that's being revealed?
Yeah. Well, I think the obvious symptoms are things like on sexual issues. I mean, the sexual issues have come to the forefront in America's culture wars, and that's where that's the symptom that we see in churches that are accommodating to a gay rights agenda. They're accommodating to transgender issues, that are accommodating to abortion, all the things that are circulating around the sexual issues. I think that, to my mind, those are symptoms rather than root causes, and I think that's important. Part of what we're trying to do at Theopolis is try to restore kind of the foundations. If you just address the issues at the symptom level, then you're not really getting at the disease. And I think that there's a fundamental issue is just a distrust of Scripture in a lot of churches. And then even those churches that have a commitment to Scripture have a very superficial and thin understanding of what the Bible's about. And so the churches are just not saturated in the Word as they need to be. It's no wonder that the judgments about particular moral questions are distorted, because the foundations are not there. I mean, again, going back to our agenda at Theopolis, I think that questions, liturgical and sacramental questions, are crucial. Those tend to seem. I suspect a lot of Christians see those questions as kind of side issues in our current cultural struggles. Why would you be spending your time worrying about frequency of communion when we've got these kinds of moral issues that are really, really important, that need to be addressed? But again, I think the in some ways complete absence of a kind of liturgical and sacramental life in the church is one of the foundational problems for the weakness and the lethargy of the church. When I think about the questions like identity has become such a huge question. And for Christians, the question of identity is fundamentally a sacramental one. We are who we are because God named us in baptism. And then that frames everything. Whoever else you are and whatever else you are named by the name of the triune God. They think about sexual issues, and then I think I can't link up all the connections, but I think that the sexual confusions have a lot to do with a failure to be the bride at the bridal feast at the Lord's table, as a regular part of our worship. Again, psalm singing is a huge thing for what we're doing at Theopolis. And I think the musical life of the church is a neglected concern. And again, it seems like it's tangential and secondary. I think it's pretty fundamental. So much of the ethos of the church is determined by what we sing and how we sing it. And if you're wanting to combat kind of the ascendancy of the self that Carl Trueman talked about, it's going to be hard to do that when the whole musical life of the church is about nothing but the self. And the music is kind of elevating the self and the realization of the self as the fundamental thing. I think our musical life has to be brought back to kind of fundamentals. For the Christian church, that's always been psalm singing. The Psalter has been the song book of the church. It was in the early church. Medieval monks chanted through the Psalter every week. The Reformation tried to revive psalm singing, not just for monks, but for the whole congregation. And that just displaces the self from the center of things, because we're now singing about the oppression of the poor and the cruel rulers and kings, and asking God to intervene and judge the earth. I think, and then that just gives a whole different kind of piety and outlook to the church. And those are the kinds of things that I think are more root causes. And the encouraging thing about that is that churches can pursue those kinds of things without whatever the cultural situation. I mean, nobody's prohibiting churches from singing psalms, but I think if we sang psalms, we'd have a very different kind of mentality about the world and about our role in it. And if we really had the word deep in our bones, then we would have a different kind of resolution in relation to the cultural issues. So those are the kinds of things that I think are root sources.